You send a message, and then you wait. And while you wait, something quietly starts happening inside them. They're reading it again, rewording their reply 3 times, wondering if they said too much, wondering if you're annoyed, wondering if the silence means something. From the outside, nothing is happening. But on the inside, everything is happening. That's not overthinking. That's not being sensitive. That's a particular way the nervous system has learned to move through the world. And once you know what it looks like, you'll start recognizing it everywhere.
High neuroticism people don't always look anxious. That's the first thing most people get wrong. They can be funny, warm, successful, even composed in a room full of people. But there are small things, quiet things, that give it away if you know where to look. They apologize more than the situation asks for, not because they're weak, but because they've learned that conflict, even minor conflict, feels like a threat. So they neutralize it early, before it has a chance to grow. They remember the one critical comment in a conversation that had 9 kind ones. Not because they're being dramatic, because their brain is wired to scan for danger, and criticism, real or imagined, registers as danger. They replay conversations after they're over, lying in bed, hours later, revisiting something they said at lunch, wondering how it landed, wondering if it changed how someone sees them. These aren't personality flaws. They're signals, the nervous system doing what it was trained to do.
And here's where it gets interesting. Most people assume neuroticism is about being emotional, too sensitive, too reactive. But that's only part of the picture. At its core, high neuroticism is about one thing. Emotional unpredictability feels unsafe. People high in this trait often grew up in environments where the emotional climate shifted without warning. A parent whose mood changed the whole room, a household where love felt conditional, feedback that was inconsistent, praised one day, criticized for the same thing the next. So the brain built a system, a constant monitoring system, always scanning, always anticipating, always trying to calculate the emotional temperature of the room before deciding it's safe to relax. That's why they're so perceptive. They had to be. They notice micro-expressions most people miss. They can tell when someone's tone doesn't match their words. They feel tension in a room before anyone names it. That's not anxiety being dramatic. That's a finely tuned survival skill that never got the signal it was safe to turn off.
But the real pattern isn't what it looks like on the surface. What looks like sensitivity is actually hypervigilance. What looks like overthinking is actually risk management. What looks like people-pleasing is actually emotional regulation, keeping the environment stable enough to feel safe inside of. High neuroticism people often feel things more intensely and for longer. A frustrating morning doesn't dissolve by noon. It carries. A kind gesture lands deeper than expected. A small rejection can echo for days. That's not weakness. That's a nervous system that was never taught how to return to neutral quickly. And what makes this particular pattern so invisible is that the person living it often functions completely normally on the outside. They go to work, they make people laugh, they show up. But there's a low hum running underneath, a quiet noise that never fully turns off, a background sense that something could go wrong, that the piece is temporary, that the other shoe is still somewhere up there, waiting.
Over time, this shapes how a person sees themselves. They start to believe they're too much, too sensitive, too reactive, too needy. They build distance between themselves and their own emotional responses. They learn to dismiss what they feel before someone else can. The irony is, these are often some of the most self-aware people in any room. They've spent so long observing themselves and others that they understand human behavior in ways that most people don't. They see patterns, they pick up on subtext, they read between lines. But they rarely trust what they see, because the same system that makes them perceptive also makes them doubt. That tension between seeing clearly and constantly second-guessing is one of the quietest, most consistent signatures of high neuroticism. So when you see someone apologizing too quickly, going quiet after conflict, spiraling over a text, replaying conversations that already ended, you're not seeing someone who can't handle life. You're seeing someone whose nervous system learned to treat uncertainty like a threat. Someone who built an entire internal architecture around staying emotionally safe. It was never random. It was a pattern. And patterns, once you can name them, look completely different than they did before. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that awareness alone, the ability to recognize what's actually happening beneath behavior, changes how you understand the people around you, and maybe, quietly, yourself. If this explains something you've been circling for a while, there's more to uncover.